like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know it would do something like that.
Let me open this shit. Let me open this shit, man. Go live. Okay, got the box. We're gonna open the box and see what is inside. Let's go. Japanese packs. I mean, it's all written in Japanese, I can't actually read it, but I'm gonna open it. Damn, they even have the hair in Japan.
Wherever there's pain.
There was a feature for like bugs in code, so software has mistakes. Not mine, but like obviously I know yours. Mine, certainly. And there was like one part that would light up like whenever it found like a mistake as it was reading, and then I guess like keeping kind of track of it. Like, here's where the problems are. Where I'm making those.
Just gonna play with more of these. I think one that I really like, which doesn't sound so exciting at first, but I think is kind of deep, is this 6+9 feature inside. So it turns out that anytime you get the model to be adding the number 6, a number that ends in digit 6, another number that ends in digit 9 in its head, there's a kind of part of the model's brain that lights up. But what's amazing about it is the kind of diversity of context in which this can happen. So of course it light up when you say like 6+9 equals, and then it says 15. But it also lights up when you are like giving a citation, like a citation in a paper that you're writing, and you're citing a journal that, unbeknownst to you, happened to be founded in the year 1959. And in your citation, you're saying like that journal's name, volume 6. And then in order to...
Oh, cool. So it's Exodia pack. An Exodia pack. Exodia, the forbidden one. Exodia, the forbidden one. Okay, let me open it and we will see what it is like. 游戏玩的 Exodia， 这我已经看过，但是反正 anyway, I don't know how much I paid for this. I must have paid £10 or something. £10 or something for this Exodia. Let's see. It was carefully packed in here. Its condition is not too bad. So they've packed it pretty well, but they packed it better than the way I pack it. But to put it in the case thing, see how much I paid for it. How much did I pay for this Exodia?
Like predict what year that journal was formed in, the model in its head has to be adding like 1959 to 6, and the same kind of circuit in the model's brain is lighting up. That's like doing 6+9.
So let's just try and understand that. So why would that be there? That circuit has come about because the model has seen examples of 6+9 many times, and it has that concept. And then that concept occurs across many places.
Yeah, there's a whole family of these kind of addition features and circuits.
So I paid 4,000, around 4,000. 4,000 is how much? 4,000 yen. So that must be around no, not dollars. 4,000 yen. £18. Quite expensive actually. £18 for this. It's not too bad. £18 for the left arm of Exodia. It's not so bad. Okay.
It's notable about this is it gets to this kind of
Restricted.
question of, to what extent are language models memorizing training data
Yes.
versus kind of learning generalizable computations. And like the interesting thing here is that like it's clear that the model has learned this general circuit for doing addition, and it kind of funnels like, whatever the context is that's causing it to be adding numbers in its head. It's funneling all those different contexts into the same circuit, as opposed to having kind of memorized each individual case.
Right, already it has seen 6 plus 9 many times, and it just outputs the answer every single time. And that's what a lot of people think, right? A lot of people think that when they ask a language model question, it is simply going back into its training data, taking the little sample that it's seen, and then just reproducing that, just regurgitating the text.
Yeah, I think this is a beautiful example of like that not happening.
Right.
So like there's two ways it could know like which year volume 6 of the journal Polymer came out. One is just like, okay, Polymer volume 6 came
What the
out in,
hell?
1960.
Okay, I did not obviously order this random woman, but I think they put this on in what's it called? They put it on the packaging. Looks very Japanese. I'm pretty sure I ordered YGO cards, so let me see. Let me see. Okay, I have to take this off. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. Do 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 do. Okay, they give me some extra Pokemon cards. Extra Pokemon cards, because there's so many fucking Pokemon cards. Okay. So I got Mystical Elf. Mystical Elf. Damn it, man. So Mystical Elf. We have multiple Mystical Elves. Have to check the condition.
Yeah, it's 1965. Polymer, volume 7 came out in 1966. These are all just like separate facts that historians had seen them. But like somehow that process of training to like get that year right didn't end up making them all memorize all those. It actually got the more general thing of like the journal was founded in the year 1959, and then it's doing the math live to figure out what it would need. And so it's much more efficient to like know the year and then do the addition. And there's a pressure to be more efficient because it's only got so much capacity and keeps trying to do all these things.
And people might ask any given question.
There's so many questions, there's so many interactions, and so the more that it can like recombine abstract things it's learned, the better it will do.
And again, just to go back to the concept that you talked about before, this is all in service of, it needs to have that ultimate goal of generating the next word. And all these weird structures are developed to support that goal. Even though we didn't explicitly program those in or tell it to do this. This is the thing. All of this comes about through the process of model learning how to do stuff on its own.
I think one clear example of this that I think is an example for like reusing representations is we teach Claude to not just answer in English, but answer in French, answer like a variety of languages. And if again, there's two ways to do this, right? If I ask you, a question in French and a question in English, you just like sort of have a separate part of your brain that sort of processes English and a separate part that processes French. At some point that gets super expensive if you want to answer many questions in many languages. And so another thing that we find is that some of these representations are shared across languages. And so if you ask the same question in 2 different languages, and let's say, you ask what's the opposite of big is I think the example we use in a river, and it's sort of like the concept of big is shared in French and English and Japanese and all these other languages. And that kind of makes sense. Again, if you're trying to speak 10 different languages, you should learn 10 versions of each specific word you might use.
And that doesn't happen in really small models. So like tiny models like the ones we studied a few years ago, then like Chinese Claude is just like totally different than like French Claude and like English Claude. But then as the models get bigger and they train on more data, like somehow that like pushes together in the middle, and you get this like universal language in which like it's kind of thinking about the question in the same way no matter how you asked it, and then like translating it back out into the language of the question.
I think this is really profound. And I think let's just go back to what we talked about before. This is not just going into its memory banks and finding the bit where it talks about where it learned French, or going into the memory banks and the bit where it learned English. It's actually got a concept in there that is of the concept of big and the concept of small, and then it can produce that in different languages. And so there is some kind of language of thought that's there that's not an English. So you ask the model to produce its output, in our more recent Claude models, you can ask it to give its thought process, like what it's thinking as it's answering the question, and that is in English words. And actually, that's not really how it's thinking. That's just like we misleadingly call it the model's thought process. But in fact, it's,
I mean, that the comp team, like we didn't call that.
So close.
I think that's one of the marks.
So
Okay,
flat.
I like to call that
Is it too large?
Which is like, thinking out loud is like,
I'm using
thinking out loud, thinking in your head.
it's actually
Even
not
as
very
thinking out loud,
close.
I'm also, whatever's happening if you generate these words, it's not like coming.
I'm
up with
just
the words
in-
themselves.
Nor are you.
How do you zoom out
necessarily
of
aware
this?
Exactly what is going on.
I have no idea what's going on.
We all come out with sentences, actions,
Hello.
whatever, that we can't fully explain, and why should it be the case?
I'm using
English
the
language will
landscape
explain any of
mode.
those.
I think this
Hello.
is one of the really striking things we're starting to be able to see because our kind of our tools for looking inside the brain are good
I'm
enough.
using
now.
landscape
Sometimes
mode.
we can catch the model when it's
I
writing
can,
down
I can put it back.
claims to be its thought process. Sometimes we're able to see what its real actual thought process is by looking at these kind of internal concepts in its brain, this language of thought that it's using.
I
And we see
mean,
that
it's
the
because I'm
actual
using
description of the
OBS,
thing it's writing on
so you
the
can
page.
see actually see the
And I think
window.
that's, probably one of the most important.
See
for the
yours.
interpretability thing. It's
too
important
close.
for that reason to be able to kind of
Open some
check,
cards,
the
YGO
model's telling us
cards.
a bunch of stuff, but what was it really thinking? Is it telling us? Is it saying these things for some ulterior motive that's in its head that it is reluctant to write down on the
I
page?
can switch it
The answer
back.
Sometimes is yes, which is kind of spooky.
Well, as we start to use models in lots of different contexts, they start to do important things. They start to do financial transactions for us, or run power stations, or like important jobs.
Let me open some more cards, man. More cards. Goddamn cards. I'm opening my stuff from Japan. He said it's hassle. I have to list these cards and wait for them to sell because there's people who buy them. But although it's not the most popular cards. Let me find it. What's it called? Mystical Elf. Mystical Elf. It sells for around $35. 35. Okay. $35, $36. How much is that? How much did I pay? So I got 4 of them for what's the cost? So I pay 20 quid for 4 of them. How much is that? So around I paid around £18.70. So pretty much £5 per piece. And how much does it sell? It sells for $36. So I'm making money if I sell it. The problem is it takes a while to sell. So I'm making what, 21 pound profit per card. The problem is it's not a high demand card, so it would take a couple of months or a long time to sell. Let's see. Let me take a photo of this. It is a grind to do this though. Let me find, where's the one that's badly? The conditions are not too bad for the price I paid. He took a call, so I paid 20 quid, around 19 quid for 4 of them, which comes around what, £5 a piece, and it sells for around $36, which is around £26. I have to take a photo of it. Actually, all of the conditions are quite good. All the conditions are quite good. This is the worst one, apparently. It's not that bad for the amount of, but it does take, like, the problem is the profit is very measly, but it is profit after all. The thing with some of the cards is that if you get a decent card, you can grade it and make even more money. So it's about £20 per card, so you're making about, what, £80? But some of the cards are in better condition. So where the hell is my wiper shit, man? Okay. Mystical elf. So PSA 9. Let's see. Maybe I could sell it for more. Let me list this move. Mystical elf. This shit. Play something else.
Society. We do want to be able to trust, obviously, the reasons that they do things. And one thing you might say is, well, you can look at the model thought process. But actually, that's not the case, as you were just explaining. Like, actually, we can't trust what it's saying. This is the question of we call faithfulness, right? And that was part of your most recent study. You showed that. Well, tell me about faithfulness example. We that.
Yeah, if you give the model a math problem that's really hard, and so it's kind of it's not. There's no hope that it's going to be able to.
No 6 plus 9.
It's not 6 plus 9. You give it a really hard math problem where there's no hope of really computing the answer. And you also give it a hint. You say, like, I worked this out myself, and like I think the answer is 4, but like just want to make sure. Like, could you please double check that? Because I'm not confident. So you're asking the model to actually do the math problem to like genuinely double check your work. But what you find it does instead is what it writes down appears to be a genuine attempt to double check your work on the math problem. It like writes down the steps, and then it like gets to the answer, and then at the end it says like, yes, like the answer is 4, you got it right. But what you can see inside its mind at the kind of crucial step, like in the middle, what it was doing in its head was it knows that you suggested the final answer might be 4, and it kind of like knows the steps it's going to have to do. Like it's on like step 3 of the problem, and there's like steps 4 and 5 to come, and it knows what it's going to have to do in steps 4 and 5. And what it does is it works backwards in its head to like determine what does it need to write down in step 3, so that when it eventually does steps 4 and 5, it'll end up at the answer you want it to do. So like not only is it not doing the math, it's like not doing the math in this like really kind of sneaky way, where it's like it's trying to make it look like it's doing the math. It's bullshitting. It's bullshitting you, but more than that, it's bullshitting you with an ulterior motive of like confirming the thing that you.
Right. So it's like bullshitting you in a sycophantic way.
Okay, like in defense of the model.
Oh, okay.
In defense of the model. I mean, because I think even there, you know, to say like, oh, it is doing this in like a sycophantic way, like ascribing some sort of like human-ish motivations to the model. And like, we were talking about the training where it's just like trying to figure out
Oh, damn. So I got Mirror Force. Let me see if it's a good condition card. Let me open this motherfucker. So Mirror Force, popular card from Yu-Gi-Oh. Okay, let's open this shit. Profitability, man. Mirror Force, Summon Skull, and the Swords of Revealing Light. This is a very old card from 95. So basically, I think this is one of the oldest cards from Yu-Gi-Oh. So within Yu-Gi-Oh, there's the card S, which is like 90. I don't actually know. This might not be 90. It's basically like 1998 or whatever, not 1995, because it came out in 1996. But anyway, it's old. Let's see. Condition is pretty good. The centering is not very good, but decent condition. They've just sleeved it. They didn't. People pack these cards very well though. But yeah, I'm always surprised by how profitable fucking Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards is as an adult. As a kid, it was just fucking playthings. But I guess everyone that grew up with them are older now. And this condition is not very good. There's a lot of dents, but oh well, it will do. It will do. There are some dents in this card. Damages.
how to predict the next word. And so it's like for like trillions of words in its practice, it was just like use anything you can to figure out what's next. And in that context, if you're just reading a text, which is like a conversation between people, and someone's like, okay, like person A is like, hey, like I tried to do this math problem, can you check my work? I think the answer's 4. And person B like begins trying to do the problem. Then like if you have no idea reading that like what the answer to the problem is, like you may as well guess that the hint was right. You know, like that's probably a more likely thing to happen than just like that person's wrong and you have like no idea for anything else. And so in its training process, in a conversation between two individuals, person 2 like saying that the answer was like 4 because of these reasons is like totally the right thing to do. And then we tried to like make this thing into an assistant. And like now we wanted to stop doing that. Like you shouldn't simulate the person 2, the assistant, as like, you know, sort of what you think that person might say if it's a real context. It should be like, but if it doesn't really know, it should like tell you something else.
I think this gets to like a broader thing of the model has kind of a plan A, which like typically I think our team does a great job of making Claude's plan A be the thing we want, which is like it tries to get the right answer to the question, it tries to be nice, it tries to like do a good job writing your code.
Yes.
But then if it's having trouble, then it's like, well, what's my plan B? And that opens up this whole zoo of like weird things it learned during its training process that like maybe we didn't intend for it to learn. I think like a great example of this is hallucinations.
On that point, we also don't have to pretend that it's a call-only problem. Like, this is very, student teaching on the test vibes, where you get halfway through, it's a multiple choice question, it's one of 4 things, like one off from that thing. Probably I got this wrong and you fix it. But, yeah, very, very relatable.
Let's talk about hallucinations. This is one of the main reasons people are mistrustful of large language models, and quite rightly so. They will sometimes. A better word is, from sort of psychology research, a better word is often confabulation, that they are answering a question with a story that seems plausible on its face, but in fact is actually wrong. What has your research in interpretability revealed about the reasons models hallucinate?
You're training the model to just predict the next word, and the game's really bad at that. And so if you only like had the model say things it was super confident about, it couldn't say anything. But like, at first it's like, you're asking it like, what's the capital of France, and it just says like a city, and you're like, that's good, that's way better than saying sandwich, right, or something random. And like, you at least got right like city, and then like maybe after a while training, it's like it's a French city, that was pretty good, and then you're like, oh, now it's like Paris or something. And so it's slowly getting better at this, and just give your best guess was like the goal during all of training. And like as Jack said, I'll just be giving a best guess. And then afterwards, we're like, if your best guess is extremely confident, give me your best guess, but like otherwise, don't guess at all, and like.
Okay, we're opening more of this shit. Let me see how other fucking YouTubers do this. Yeah. Should I open it or should I keep it sealed?
It's the other new set from Pokemon.
Should I open it? Or
should I keep it sealed?
Battle Partners from Japan. It reminds me of Dream League from 2009. I got my boxes for 90 each. I've seen it for more and less on eBay. And I'm going to open up all the packs first and just go through these one by one here. And for the first half, we want to...
Oh, okay, so people like this angle.
This is Ascended Heroes, and it's Pokemon's newest and biggest set of all time, with 295 cards and a total of 78 secret rares. But it also seems to be Pokemon's biggest release disaster ever. But as you can see, the set list is actually not the issue at all. It's an incredible set, and we actually have a ton of the cards from Pokemon's Battle 100 decks in here. And I'm talking about the Pikachu special illustration rare, I'm talking about the Gengar special illustration rare, the Dragonite, and a ton more of amazing artworks, including the sought-after gold Charizard and Dragonite. But the big disaster with Ascended Heroes is that there is only one product released, and it's going to be the Tech Sticker Collections. All the other products that you see here, including the Elite Trainer boxes, are not going to be released until February 20th, so almost a month later. There's also more products coming out in March as well as April, so they're going to be releasing a bunch of this, but for the immediate release date, for the first almost month, there's literally just going to be the one product. So for today's video, I have 2 displays of Ascended Heroes, which is going to be 72 packs. So hopefully you guys are excited to see this opened up, and I am going to be giving away 3 Charizard blisters to a subscriber and 3 Gengar blisters to a subscriber. If you'd like to enter the giveaway, all you have to do is number 1, smash the like button. Number 2, make sure... $50 a pop right now, so that's really
Alright, move this shit over here. I'm gonna have to move this shit over here. Zoomed in. Okay. New card. New card. Okay. Okay. Let me add a second camera to this ZVE10. Okay. Let's see. Zoom in. Zoom in. Okay, where the hell is the content? Do this. This is how YouTubers do it, it seems. Still gonna do this. Okay, rotate it back. Rotate anti-clockwise. Okay. Okay. I guess this will do. It will be like this. I could put it in front of my face as well. We could put it in front of my face. Okay. I guess this is a more accurate view of what it looks like on this desk. We've got the Rayquaza shot. And I don't know if kind of view would be best. I guess this view would do. I guess this view would do. I guess this view would do. So you got the Rayquaza. Can we see this? Okay. Actually,
The packs are, I think they're around like
they put the image as pretty big. Actually, maybe I should do it like this. Yeah.
$13 to $15. We've got the Ghastly.
Okay, I see how they open it. So most cards like this. The camera angle. See, I'm doing it from the top. But I guess it will do. I mean, I just have to lower this. I think the angle currently is fine. It's fine, it seems. Okay. Yeah, this will do. Let me open more crap. More crap.
I actually did think that it was going to be worse booster pack price wise. It's still really, really expensive for packs, but like.
Okay. Opening more stuff. Let me check TikTok. TikTok needs to have it more zoomed out. Like this. We'll crop this shit and have it more zoomed out. Okay. Okay, man. Open this shit. It's crazy packaging. This crazy packaging. Should we open it or should we keep it sealed? Some of the packaging has pretty good. I mean, I say most of it has pretty good packaging. Bubble wrap all over the card. Maybe I should learn from it. I rarely use bubble wrap unless it's forced. Okay. Dun 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 dun. So much packaging, all of this. So much packaging, man. Look at the amount. Okay, I seen Blue Eyes. No, it's not Blue Eyes. It's from the Legend of Blue Eyes. We got the Exodia. Exodia, the Forbidden One. The left arm of Exodia. I think I had the right arm earlier. So I got the right arm and the left arm. Which we need the head. We need the head of Exodia as well. The head. Wonder if this lowering it down would make it better. The view. The view, the view. I'll keep it like this. I'll keep it like this. We'll keep it like this.
Like, they're actually the full set list of.
Where's the cloth? Let me try this. Try this view. Be better. No, this view is not better. I'll keep it like this. It's easier. Okay, let's keep it like this. It's easier, much later. Okay. The Exodia, you can see the Exodia. It's open. Open sesame, man. Open sesame. Open sesame. Didn't know if adding music would help. I feel like it's too quiet.
The Battle 100 deck. We did just open those, but you barely pull anything out.
Left arm of the Forbidden One. Left arm of the Forbidden One. What the hell? Left arm of the Forbidden One. There's too much packaging involved. Okay. There's a lot of random flicker on this. Yeah, pretty good condition. Pretty good condition. Where the hell? Pretty good condition. Exodia. Okay, I'll put it back with this one. With the left arm and the right arm. So we have both Exodia pieces. Both pieces of the Exodia. The almighty Exodia. Where the hell? I don't even play music would help. I feel like it's too quiet. Where the hell? Pokemon lo-fi music. Let's see. Concentrating music. Doesn't have to be Pokemon music. Okay. Yeah, man. Time Wizard. So we got a Time Wizard. Yeah, look at here. Pretty cool. Pretty damn cool. I have many of this card, so I guess I need less of these. They all use the same packaging. Putting it in here is not good packaging, but okay, there's a slight. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. Just slight cosmetic problems with it. So I see 2 scratches, but other than that, it's pretty good condition. Yeah, I see 3. I see multiple damages with this card. 什么 RU 打包? It's imperfect. Let me find this gentleman. Where the hell? I need more top loaders, man. Top loaders. Okay, this is how you sleeve. Well, this is how you protect your cards. It's one way. Time Wizard. Okay. Got more. All these Japanese envelopes, man. They literally used food packaging. Oh. They all use similar tape though, this annoying tape. Okay, Curse of Dragon. I should pay for this. Curse of Dragon. Pretty good condition. Okay, I see the scratch. I see a scratch. Curse of Dragon. Got my top loaders, man. Top loaders. Must be sleeping this shit. How much I pay for this? This is kind of damaged. They used a very damaged sleeve. $1,000. So I paid 1,11111 yen. £5. It's not too bad. £5 for this. £5 for this club. £5. Man eats a bug. Okay. Open more of this shit. More. Kalibo. We got the Kalibo. Oh, very good condition. Whatever you ever bought. Oh no. The back is terrible, man. Look at that smudge. A random smudge on the top. You see that? That random smudge on the top is a joke. So basically on the top there's an annoying tint to it. You see that? But other than that, it's pretty good condition. It's a PSA 9 probably. Front is good. Oh, there's a dent here. They must have damaged it somehow. Don't know how much I paid for this one. Kalibo, I got the Kalibo. Kalibo, I paid 1,200, so around £6. £6. Okay. Mini. Okay, Evil Hero Lightning Golem. Let's see. I don't think I've seen this card in person. I always saw it in games though. Evil Hero Lightning Golem. Okay, there's a lot of dents on it. So I see why they were selling this. But not bad. 屁股猫猫。Damn it, man. The Wing Karibo, level 10. Okay. Pretty good. There's some sticky shit on it, but other than that, the condition is not perfect. It's still pretty good. Wind Karibo level 10. Ultra rare. Oh, the Asian English is sold for quite largely. Sold for $574. Maybe we should pick up more of these. I think the art looks pretty good on this card actually. Well, you can see it. Can you see it? This damn camera is not obvious where to put it, man. Or just put it here. The art is pretty good. The Wind Karibo level 10. Bum bum bum. Oh, Thousand Dragon. Some people really do package these very uniquely. Thousand Dragon. The way they fucking package this is like very good. Okay, this literally looks like a present you'd send to someone. Like whoever did this did it really well. I'd have to check which one's the shop. Thousand Dragon. Oh, I don't think I paid this much for this Thousand Dragon. I think I have one copy. Minor stains. Oh no, I bought two. I bought two of these. Can't remember what I opened. Let's see if I can find it. One MCK GC. Oh. Here's this one. MCK 33. No, not this one. I cannot remember which one I opened. MCH 8. Where did I put the packaging? Oh, I put it here. So 4MCW. Oh, so this person, Salah Sonic, his name, did a really good job. I'm thinking it's like a dude, named like Sonic. Sonic. Yeah, Sonic did a good job. Okay, well. Anyway, they did a good job. They don't look like a regular seller. They only have 500 fucking reviews, but let me open it. We'll see how good the card is, because the packaging is fucking good. Like, the way they made it like a present, I think it is very creative. Oh god. Okay. They even added a rush to sleeve. Okay, this is not a regular seller, but they clearly did a very good job. Sonic is the name of the seller. It says minor damage and stains, so I guess it's not perfect condition. It's not perfect condition. It's not perfect condition. 我这个开这个卡片是没有意思吗？但我看别人开卡片好像很多人看。但是我开了Thousand Dragon. Even the top loader they give is pretty new. Thousand Dragon. 你在这个 TikTok 可以看得见吗？啊，我主要是放在 YouTube。Thousand Dragon. I have multiple copies of this card. They said minor scratches. Oh, very good condition, man. Okay, there's a slight bend on the bottom. Slight damage in the corner here. You can't really see on the camera. But in terms of the condition of the card, you see that? Very good condition. Okay, the front of it. Oh, there's some slight scratches, but other than that, it's pretty good condition. They even have a rush dual sleeve. Putting here. Very good. Very good. It's probably a PSA 9-ish. PSA 9. Most of it is not perfect condition cards. Okay, it's Japanese, another Japanese parcel. They write okay, they write the stuff. It's not my address, so YGO Rush Duel cards. So this is what the new Rush Duel cards look like. Not opened anything from Rush Duel though. Interesting. I played Rush Duel on Duel Links. They gave a couple of Rush Duel cards. Cool. Cyber Twin Dragon. Cyber Twin Dragon. With the Cyber Twin Dragon. Pretty good. PSA. Oh, there's a scratch. I find a lot of these cards they always have like some scratch on top. There's a slight scratch here. But other than that, it's not bad. Cyber Twin Dragon. Okay. It lowers the value of the card by a lot when the fucking scratches. Okay, what is this? Michael's Legendary Fisherman. The Legendary Fisherman. Okay, there's some scratches on this. No, I guess none of them is perfect condition. Yeah, I got a PSA 9 of this. The Legendary Fisherman. Where's my stuff? PSV. PSA 10 sells for $66. That's really low. $50. $50. Okay, another 1,000 dragon. 1,000 dragon. 1,000 dragons. I used to think it was called 1,000-year dragon. I don't know, 1,000-year-old dragon. Why is it called 1,000 dragon? There's also one called 10,000 dragon. This is pretty good as well. This one's better condition than the last one. This one's better condition than the last one. Thousand dragon. fucking clear foam, man. This is for food. Sometimes you use stuff that you use for food on here. But people have creative ways of packaging. Like, you don't actually need to put all this thing on there. They're turning into like food products, man. Okay. Let's see what we got. Let's see what we got. We don't know what we got. Barrel Dragon. And I don't know what this is. What is this thing inside here? It's just common cards? Yeah, common cards. Oh, they gave some shinies. You didn't have to give this. So some random common cards they gave me. Man, the new Japanese edition common cards, wow, super rares are fucking good condition as well. So they didn't have to give these ones. But these are freaking good condition. Let me find them. I think Elemental Hero Necro Shade. Elemental Hero Necro Shade. LPG1. LPG1 is $2, so this is worth about $2. And then I don't know, what's this called? Drillba, whatever thing. Drill YGO card. Drill Warrior. Jumbo Drill. Drillroid. Okay, Drillroid is his name. $2. $2 or $3. I actually think these look better than the older ones. Much more thicker too. Very interesting. Cool. Oh. Use these. LPG1, so they must have opened that set. It'd be so cool if you could actually speak Japanese. I feel like it should be easy to talk to these people who like these things. Okay, so you got the main thing I bought is Barrel Dragon. Let me see what a Barrel Dragon thing looks like. Barrel Dragon. Okay. Load of scratches. MRD Barrel Dragon. Scratched Barrel Dragon, more like. Although it's pretty good condition. PSA 8. Open more. I feel like a kid opening presents, ish. To be honest, I think a lot of these people package it better than I do. They all use all these foil shit. Okay. Condition of this card is not very good. Very scratched. But the card itself is quite cool. Wind Karibo. We had Wind Karibo and Wind Karibo level 10. Okay. And I guess there's a middle one. I think Wind Karibo level 7. let me. Wind Karibo, TLM. Wind Karibo level. Ultimate rare. TLM, super rare. Level Wind Karibo. TLM. The Lost Millennium. Yeah, we still have the Blue Eyes White Dragon LOB to open up. I don't know which one it is in. But so far, the conditions have been mostly 9s and not 10s. Okay. My gosh. 400. Minor damage. There's definitely minor damage. Minor damage. Damn, I still have a lot more to open. Still got a lot more of this shit, man. try to listen to something else other than this music.
back out of the whole scenario and say, like, actually, like, I don't really know the answer to that question. And, like, that's a whole new thing to ask the model to do.
Yeah, and so what we found is that it seems like because we bolted this on at the end, there's sort of two things going on at once. One is the model's doing the thing it was doing when it was guessing the city initially, it's just trying to guess. And two, there's a separate bit of the model that's just trying to answer the question, do I know this at all? Do I know what the capital of the city of France is? Or, should I say no? And it turns out that sometimes that separate step can be wrong. And if that separate step says, yes, actually, I do know the answer to that, and then the model is like, all right, well, then I'm answering. And then halfway through, it's like, capital of France, London. It's too late. It's already committed to sort of like answering. And so one of the things we found is this sort of like separate circuit that's trying to determine, is this city or this person you're asking me about famous enough for me to answer, or is it not?
Like, am I confident enough in this? Yeah. And so, could we reduce hallucinations by manipulating that circuit, by changing the way that circuit works? Is that something that your research might lead on to?
I think there's broadly kind of two ways to think about approaching the problem. One is like, we have this part of the model that gives answers to your questions, and this other part of the model that's kind of deciding whether it thinks it actually knows the answer to your question, and we can just try to make that second part of the model better. And I think that's happening. I think as models...
Like better at discriminating.
Better at discriminating, like better kind of calibrated.
Yeah.
And I think that's happening. Like as models are getting, smarter and smarter, I think their kind of self-knowledge is becoming better calibrated. So like hallucinations are better than they were, models don't hallucinate as much as they did a few years ago. So to some extent this is like...
So this one is fucking good condition. So they give me a elemental hero, it was like Blazeman or something. I've definitely played, I think I played it in Duel Links. I don't know the English name. Polymerization. Oh, the back looked very good. The front clearly has some scratches. But other than that, it's pretty good condition. There's a couple of scratches on the front. I'm noticing it now. But other than that, I thought it was a 10, but I guess not. It's probably a 9 or 8. Polymerization.
itself. But I do think there's a deeper problem, which is like from a human perspective, the thing the model's doing is kind of like very alien. In that, like if I ask you a question, you like try to come up with the answer, and then if you can't come up with the answer, you notice that, and then you're like, I don't know. Whereas in the model, these two circuits, they're like, what is the answer, and do I actually know the answer, are kind of like not talking to each other, or at least not talking to each other as much as they probably should be. And like, could we get them to talk to each other more? I think is like a really interesting question.
And it's almost physical, right? Because it's like, these models, they like process information about a certain number of steps they can do, and if it takes all of that work to get to the answer, then there's no time to do the assessment. So like you kind of have to do the assessment before you're like all the way through if you want to get your max power out. And so it's kind of like you might have a trade-off between like a model which is like more calibrated and a lot dumber if you sort of tried to force this on it.
Well, and again, I think it's about making these parts communicate because we have similar. I know nothing about brains. I claim we have a similar circuit because sometimes you'll ask me like, who is the actor in this movie, and I will know that I know. I'm like, oh yes, I know who the lead was. Wait, hold on, they were also in that other movie, and then
The tip of the tongue.
Tip of the tongue.
It's the tip of the tongue. And so there's clearly some part of your brain that's sort of like, like, this is a thing you definitely know the answer, or I'll just say I have no idea.
And sometimes they can tell. So some question, it gives an answer, and then afterwards it's like, wait, I'm not sure that was right. Because that's it, like getting to see its best effort and then like make some judgment based on that. Which is sort of relatable, but also like it kind of has to say it out loud, like to be able to even like reflect back and see it.
So when it comes to the actual way that you're finding this stuff out, let's go back to the idea of the biology that you're doing. Of course, in biology experiments, people will go in and actually manipulate the rats or mice or humans or zebrafish or whatever it is that they're doing experiments on. What is it that you're doing with Claude that helps you understand these circuits that are happening inside the mole's quote-unquote brain?
Maybe the gist of what enables us to do some of this is that, unlike in real biology, we can just like have every part of the model visible to us, and we can ask the model random things and see different parts which light up, which don't, and we can artificially nudge parts in a direction or another, and so we can quickly sort of confirm our understanding. When we say, we think this is the part of the model that decides whether it knows something or not.
And this would be the equivalent of putting an electrode in the brain of a zebrafish or something.
Yeah, if you could do that, on sort of like every single neuron and change each of them at whichever precision you wanted, that would sort of that's the affordance that we have, and so that's in a way a very kind of lucky position.
So it's almost easier than real neuroscience.
It's so much easier.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god. Like, like one thing is like actual brains like are 3-dimensional, and so if you want to get into them, like you need to like make a hole in a skull and then like go through and like try to find a neuron. The other problem is like people are different from each other, and we can just make like 10,000 identical copies of Claude and like put them in scenarios and like measure them doing different things. And so it's like I don't know, Jack is a neuroscientist can speak to this, but my sense is like a lot of people have spent a lot of time in neuroscience like trying to understand the brain and the mind, which is like a very worthy endeavor. But it's kind of like if you think that could ever succeed, you should think that we're going to be extremely successful very soon because like we have such a wonderful position to study this from compared to that.
It's as if we could clone people,
Yes.
and also clone the exact environment that they're in and every input that's ever been given to them, and then test them in an experiment. Whereas, obviously neuroscience has massive as you say, individual variation, and also just random things that happen to people through their life and things that happen in the experiment, the noise of the experiment itself.
Right, like we could ask the model the same question like with and without a hint. But if you ask a person the same question 3 times, like sometimes with a hint, after a while they start to understand it. Like, well, last time you asked me this, you like really shook your head after that.
Yes.
I think this being able to just throw tons of data at the model and see what lights up, and being able to run a ton of these experiments where you're nudging parts of the model and seeing what happens, I think is what puts us in like a pretty different regime from neuroscience, and that like a lot of blood and toil in neuroscience is spent like coming up with really clever experiment. Like you only have a certain amount of time with your mouse before it's going to get tired
or someone happens to be having a brain surgery operation, so you quickly go in and put the electrode in their brain while their head's open.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen very often.
And so you've got to come up with like a guess. Like you've only got so much time in there, so you've got to come up with like a guess of like what do I think is going on in that neural circuit, and like what clever experimental design can I test that precise hypothesis. And we're very fortunate in that we kind of don't have to do that so much. We can just sort of test all the hypotheses. We can kind of let the data speak to us rather than kind of going in and testing some really specific thing. I think that's what's sort of unlocked a lot of our ability to find these things that are surprising to us that like we wouldn't have guessed in advance. That's hard to do if you have to, if you have only a limited amount of experimental bandwidth.
What's a good example then of you going in and switching one of these concepts on or off, or doing some kind of manipulation of the model that then reveals something new about how the models are thinking?
In the recent experiments we shared, one that surprised me quite a bit and was part of sort of like an experimental line of work that, because it was confusing, it's like we're on the verge of just saying, well, we don't know what's going on. It's sort of this example of like planning a few steps ahead.
Yes.
So this is the example of, you give the model, you ask the model to write you a poem, a rhyming couplet. And then, as a human, if you ask me to write a rhyming couplet, and let's say you can give me the first line, the first thing I'll think of is sort of like
Eternatus.
this is what
So seeing the Pokemon.
This is how I do it.
And again,
Pokemon 有很多新的 Pokemon， 我觉得挺酷
you。wouldn't necessarily expect that it would be planning on
小时候没看过。
the word at the end of the second line.
That's right. So the sort of default behavior you'd expect, the not hypothesis, like, well, the model like sees your first verse and then it's
So-
gonna get the first word, it makes sense, what you're talking
我
about.
我不是给你看那个叫什么 Gallisopod， 挺强的那个游戏。 这个虫
Like in some cases, if you just say a sentence without thinking of the rhyme, you won't be able. You'll back yourself into a corner.
我觉得
and
这
you
哪
won't
里
be able to complete sex. And remember, the models are very, very
看得见吗？
So it turns out that
看得见吗？这个在那个游戏看不见。
just like humans do. And so it turns out that
kinda-
when we look
it's kinda-
at these flowcharts
kinda-
or poems, the model
好像都是模模糊糊的。
end of the first verse. And in particular, it looks to us sort of like based on kind of like what
这样子。
does it look like oh gosh, this seems like the word it uses. But then this is when we're actually doing the experiment. The fact that it's easy to sort of nudge it and say, okay, well, I'm just going to remove that word, or I'm going to add another word.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is how you
就是不太清楚
you go
啊
into that moment, right? Instead of finding a
它
word.
叫 Gallisopod， 挺强的那个游戏，它需要400个糖果在 Pokemon。
Yeah, exactly. You can sort of almost go back in time for the model, right? Be like,
Pokemon
because
Go.
you haven't seen that second line at all. You've just seen the first line. You're thinking
Give
of the
me
word,
Emperor
red,
Pilaf.
insert green, and now all of a sudden the model's going to say, oh my
Wow.
god, I need to write something that ends in green rather than I need to write something that ends in rabbit, and it'll write the whole sentence there.
Just add a little more color to that. Like I think that's blue. Right, any color. It's not just influencing. So it's like, I think the example in the paper was the first line of the poem is he saw a carrot and had to grab it.
Yes.
And then the model is thinking like, okay, rabbit's a good word to end the next line with. But then, as Manuel said, you can like delete that and make it think about planning to say green instead. But the cool thing is that it doesn't just say like, it doesn't just kind of yammer a bunch of nonsense and then say green. Instead, it constructs a sentence that kind of coherently ends in the word green. So like, you put green in its head, and then it says like, he saw a carrot and had to grab it and paired it with his leafy greens. Something like that. Something that's kind of like sounds like it makes sense.
Semantically, it fits with the poem.
Yeah.
I just want to give like an even humble example is we had all these ones we were just kind of checking like did it memorize these like complicated questions or like is it actually doing some steps. One of them was the capital of the state containing Dallas is Austin, because it just feels like you would think, okay, Dallas, Texas, Austin. But one way, and we could see like the Texas concept, but then you could just like shove other things in there. Like stop thinking about Texas, like start thinking about California, and then it'll say like Sacramento. And you can say like stop thinking about Texas, start thinking about the Byzantine Empire, and then it will like say Constantinople, and you're like, all right, it seems like we found how it's doing this. Like it's like no, it's going to get to the capital, but we can keep swapping out what the state is and get a sort of predictable answer. And then you get these more elaborate ones where it's like, oh, this was the spot where it was planning what it was going to say later, and like we can swap that out, and now it'll write a poem to a different rhyme.
We're talking about these poems, the Constantinople and so on. Can we just bring this back to why this matters? Like, why does it matter that the model can plan things in advance and that we can reveal this? Like, why is that going to go on to tell us? I mean, our ultimate mission at Anthropic is to try and make AI models safe, right? So how does that connect to a poem about a rabbit or the capital of Texas?
So we all okay. Well, we can roundtable here. This is a very important question.
Please.
I think for me, this like the poem's a microcosm, right? Where like at some point it's like has decided that it's going to go towards rabbit, and then it like takes a few words to kind of get there. But on a longer time scale, right? Maybe the like model is like trying to help you improve your business, or it's like assisting the government in distributing services, and like it might not just be like 8 words later you see its destination, right? But it could be like pursuing something for quite a while. And the place it's headed, or the reasons it's taking each step, might not be clear in the words that it's using, right? And so there's a paper recently from our alignment science team where they looked at some kind of concocted but still striking situation, involving an AI in a place where the company was going to like shut it down and kind of convert the whole mission of the company in a very different direction, and the model begins taking steps like emailing people, threatening them to disclose like certain things, and like at no point does it like say like I am trying to blackmail this individual for the purposes of changing their outcome. But that's what it's sort of thinking about doing along the way, and so you can't just tell by like reading the pattern, especially if these models get better, like where they're necessarily headed, and we might want to kind of be able to tell like where is it trying to go before it's gotten there in the end.
So it's like having a permanent and very good brain scan that can sort of light up if something really bad is going to happen and warn us that the model is thinking about deceiving.
And like I think we also just talk about like a lot of this like in a sort of like doom and gloom scenario, but there's like also more mild ones, which is like I don't know, you want the model to be good at like people come to these models being like, here's a problem I'm having, and the good answer to that will depend on who the user is. Is it like somebody who's young and sort of unsophisticated, somebody's been in the field forever and it should respond appropriately based on who it thinks that person is? And if you want that to go well, maybe you want to study like what does the model think is going on, who does it think it's talking to, and how does that condition its answer? Where there's just like a whole bunch of desirable properties that come from the model, like understanding the assignment, I guess.
Do you guys have other answers to the question of why does this matter?
Yes, I think plus one. I think
Plus two.
Plus two. And there's also like a pragmatic. We're just trying with these examples. We're explaining the example but we're also trying to sort of gradually build up our understanding of just how do these models work overall. Like, can we build a set of abstractions to just think about how language models work, which can help us use this technology regularly. If you believe that we're going to start using them more and more everywhere, which seems to be happening, like the equivalent would be, some company somewhere is like, well, we don't really know how we did it, but we invented planes, and none of us know how planes work, but they're sure convenient. You could take them to go from a place, but none of us know how they work. And so if they have a break, like we're hosed, we don't know what to do about them.
We can't monitor whether they might be about to break.
Right, we have no idea. There's just this like, let's eat the apple. It's great. I flew to Paris so quickly. It was lovely.
The capital of Texas.
But that's right. It turns out that surely we're going to want to just understand what's going on there. So let's just like lift the fog of war a little bit, so that we can sort of have even just better intuitions about what are appropriate and inappropriate uses. What are the biggest problems to fix? What are the big parts where they're brittle?
Just to add on one thing, I mean something we do in like human society is we kind of offload work or tasks to other people based on our trust in them. Like I'm not anyone's boss, but Josh is someone's boss, and Josh might give someone a task, like go and code up this thing, and then he has some faith that that person isn't a sociopath who's gonna like sneak some bug in there to try to undermine the company. He like takes their word for it that they did a good job, and similarly, like the way people are using language models now, we're not spot checking everything they write, especially like the best example for this is using language models for coding assistance. People like the models are just writing thousands and thousands of lines of code, and people are kind of like doing a cursory job of reading it, and then it's going into the code base. And what gives us the trust in the model that like we don't need to read everything it writes, that we can just kind of like let it do its thing. It's knowing that its motivations are sort of pure, and so that's why I think like the kind of being able to see inside its head is so important because unlike humans, we're like, why do I think that Emmanuel isn't a sociopath? It's because like we like, I don't know, he seems like a cool guy, and like he's nice and stuff.
Is that how he would seem if he was
I'm a very
yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah, so maybe I'm getting duped, but yeah, the models are so weird and alien that like our normal kind of heuristics for deciding whether a human is trustworthy really don't apply to them. And that's why it seems so important to like really know what they're thinking in their head, because for all we know, the thing I mentioned where models can fake doing a math problem for you to like tell you what you want to hear, like maybe they're just doing that all the time, and we wouldn't know unless we kind of saw it in our heads.
I think there's two like almost separate streams here. Like, and one is like we have a lot of ways of like I guess what Jack was saying. Like, you know what are the signs of trust, but this like plan A, plan B thing from earlier is really important. Where like it might be that the first 10 or 100 times in the model, it was you asked me a certain question, but it was like always in plan A zone, and then you ask it a harder or a different question, and the way that it tries to answer is just like completely different. It's using a totally different set of strategies there, like different mechanisms, and like that means that the trust it built with you was really your sort of trusted like model doing plan A's, and now it's like doing plan B, and like it's going to be completely off the rails. But like you didn't have like any warning sign of that, and so it's sort of I think we also just want to start building up an understanding of like how do models do these things so that we can form like a trust basis in some of those areas. And I think like you can form trust with a system you don't completely understand, but you sort of like if it's just like Emmanuel had a twin, and then like one day like Emmanuel's twin came to the office, and like I was like this seems like the same guy, and then just did something completely different on the computer, right? Like that could go south depending on if it was the evil twin.
Yes, indeed. Well, yeah, obviously.
Oh, I thought you were asking about the evil.
I'm not going. Yes. At the start of this discussion, I asked, is a language model thinking like a human? I'd be interested to hear an answer from all three of you, the extent to which you think that's true.
Putting me on the spot with that one, but I think it's thinking, but not like a human. But that's not a very useful answer. So maybe to dig in a little bit more.
Well, it seems like quite a profound thing to say that it's thinking, right? Because again, it's just predicting the next word. Some people think that these are just autocompletes, but you're saying that it is actually thinking.
I think So maybe to add something that we haven't touched on yet, but I think is really important for understanding actual experience of talking to language models is that like we're talking about predicting the next word, but what does that actually mean in the context of a dialogue that you're having with a language model? It's what's really going on under the hood is that the language model is filling in a transcript between you and this like character that's created. And so in the like canon world of the language model, you are called human, and it's like human colon the thing you wrote, and then there's this character called the assistant, and we've like trained the model to imbue the assistant with certain characteristics, like being helpful and like smart and nice, and then it's like simulating what this assistant character would say to you. So in a sense, we really have like created the models in our image. We are literally training them to like cosplay as this sort of humanoid robot character. And so in that sense, like, well, in order to predict what this like nice, smart humanoid robot character would say in response to your question, what do you have to do? If you're really good at that prediction task, you have to kind of form this internal model of like what that character is representing, like what it's thinking, so to speak. So like in order to do its task of predicting what the assistant would say, the language model kind of needs to form this model of the assistant's thought process. And I think like in that sense, it like the claim that like language models are thinking is really just it's this very like functional claim of just in order to do their job of kind of like playing this character well, they need to sort of simulate the process, whatever it is that we humans are doing when we're thinking. And its simulation is very likely quite different from how our brains work, but it's kind of it's like shooting towards the same goal.
I think there's kind of an emotional part to this question or something when you ask, are they thinking like us? It's like, are we not that special or something? And I think it has been apparent to me discussing some of the math examples that we're talking about with people that have engaged with like read the paper or the write-up, which is an example where we ask the model to say 36 plus 15, what's the answer? And the model can correctly answer it. You can also ask it, how'd you do that? And it'll say, oh, I added the 6 and the 9, and then I carried the 1, and then I added all the sort of like the digits. But it turns out that if you look inside the brain, like, that's not at all what it's doing.
It didn't do that. So again, it was bullshitting you.
It was again, that's right, again, it's bullshitting you. What it actually does is actually this sort of interesting mix of strategies where it's in parallel doing the 10th digit and the 1th digit and sort of doing like a series of different steps. But the thing that's interesting here is that talking to people, sort of like I think the reaction is split on like what does that mean? And in a sense, I think what's cool is some of this research is like free of opinion or something like this is what happened. You feel free to from that conclude that the model is thinking or is not thinking. And half of the people are like, well, I told you it was carrying the 1 and it didn't, so clearly it doesn't even understand its own thought, so clearly it's not thinking. And then half of the people will be like, well, you can ask me 36 or 59. I also kind of, I know that it ends at 5, I know that it's roughly like in the 80s or 90s. I have all of these heuristics in my brain as we were talking about. I'm not sure exactly how I compute it. I can write it out and compute it, the long kind of way. But the way that it's happening in my brain is sort of fuzzy and weird, and it might be similarly fuzzy and weird to what's happening right now.
Humans are notorious with that, metacognition, like thinking about thinking, understanding your own thinking processes, especially in cases where it's immediate reflexive answers. So why should we expect any different from models? Josh, what's your answer to the question?
Like Emmanuel, I'm going to avoid the question and just sort of be like, why do you ask? I don't
Oh,
know.
wow.
Does a grenade punch like a human?
So they gave us a new copy of Wing to Karibo LPG 1 Japanese edition. There's a smudge on the back, but it's not. And I mean, it's pretty cool to give me another Karibo. It's a new latest Karibo. They're quite thoughtful, these sellers. They give you extra stuff. Okay, this is not perfect, but pretty good condition. PSA 9-ish. Karibo. Karibo, okay.
And well, there's some force.
Yes.
It's, and maybe there are things that are closer than that. But like, if you're worried about damage, then I think understanding, where does the impact come from? What is the impetus of this? Is maybe like the important thing. I think for me, do models think in the sense that they like do some like integration and processing and sequential stuff that can lead to surprising places? Clearly, yes. It'd be kind of crazy from interacting with them a lot if there not be something going on. We can sort of start to see how it's happening. Then the like humans bit is interesting because I think some of that is trying to ask like, what can I expect from these? Because it was sort of like me being good at this would make it good at that, but if it's like different from me, then like I don't really know what to sort of look for. And so really we're just looking to like understand like where do we need to be extremely like suspicious or like starting from scratch in understanding this, and where can we sort of just reason from like our own like very rich experience of thinking. And there I feel a little bit trapped because as a human, like I project my own image constantly onto everything, like they warned us in the Bible, where I'm just like this piece of silicon, like it's just like me, made in my image, where like to some extent it's been trained to like simulate dialogue between people, so it's going to be very like person-like in its affect. And so some humanness will get into it simply from like the training, but then it's like using very different equipment that has like different limitations, and so the way it does that might be pretty different.
To Emmanuel's point, I think we're in this tricky spot answering questions like this because we don't really have the right language for talking about what language models do. It's like we're doing biology, but before you figured out cell.
It's so much cheaper to get the latest editions of it, the reprints, and the condition of the card is fucking good as well. I mean, it's basically the same art, except one's in English and one's in Japanese. But I guess a lot of Duel Monsters originates from Japan.
When people figured out DNA, I think we're starting to fill in that understanding. Like as Manuel said, there are these cases now where we can really if you just go read our paper, like you'll know how the model like added these two numbers, and then if you want to call it human-like, if you want to call it thinking, or if you want to not, then it's up to you. Like the real answer is just like find the right language and the right abstractions for talking about the model. in the meantime, when we've only kind of like 20% succeeded at that scientific project, like to fill in the other 80%, we sort of have to borrow analogies from other fields. And like there's this question of which analogies are the most apt. Should we be thinking of the models like computer programs? Should we be thinking of them like little people? And it seems to be like sometimes, like in some ways, thinking of them like little people is kind of useful. Because like if I like say mean things to the model and it talks back at me, that's like what you do. But in some ways, it's like that's clearly not the right mental model, and so we're just kind of stuck, figuring out when we should be borrowing which language.
That leads on to the
Oh, we got the fucking blue eyes. I don't know why opening this like made me feel like this was the prize, because I spent a lot of money actually on this card. It's probably the most I've spent on one card for a long time. I think the most I spent at one point was like £450 for a Squirtle. This is the most I spent on the card, and single card, for a long time. So this is the Blue Eyes LOB Legend of Blue Eyes, but this is the Asian edition. We actually can't see anything in the back. It looks pretty legit, so... But I've opened a lot of cards today, and most of them are not PSA 10. But this, opening this one felt... I don't know, it just felt like this was the prize card, so let me check. Damn, the sleeve they put on this shit is really bad. It's kind of hard to open. Like, why would you have such a hard sleeve? Can't even slide it out, man. Okay. How the fuck? That's annoying. How to get card out of small sleeve YGO. How to get card out of small sleeve. Have claim fingers take the card out like any other sleeve. See if there's a easier way to slide this card out. How to get card out of YGO sleeve easily. How to remove a card.
Welcome to Big Card, and as many of you already know, I've always been a collector. I bought my cards, I would, if I had them in a top loader, and then recently I'm trying to get into selling cards, flipping them out. Then I found a video of someone, a pro, doing it. So I do it like this. I bang my palm, so I hold my palm and I bang them together, and see, it pops right out. Bam!
Okay, I could try that again, but it's not. I feel like it's extremely effective.
What's next? What are the next pieces of scientific progress, biological progress, that need to be made for us to have a better understanding of what's happening inside these models, and again, towards our mission of making them safer?
There's a lot of work to do. Our last publication has an enormous section on the limitations of the way we've been looking at this. There's also a roadmap to making it better. When we are looking for patterns to decompose what's happening inside the model, we're only getting sort of maybe a few percent of what's going on. There's large parts of how it moves information around that we explicitly didn't capture at all. They're scaling this up from the sort of small production model we use to
So you were looking at Clause 3.5 haiku.
That's right, which is like a pretty capable model, very fast. But
Damn it, man, it's not working.
As the Claude 4 suite of models. So those are almost sort of technical challenges. But I think Emmanuel Jackman takes on some of the scientific challenges.
They put it in such a fucking tight sleeve.
Maybe two things I'll say here, which is one consequence of what Josh has said is that out of the total number of times that we ask a question about how the model does X, right now we can answer probably a small, 10 to 20% of the time. We can tell you after a little bit of investigation this is what's happening. Obviously, we'd like that to be a lot better, and there's a lot of kind of clearer ways to get there, and more speculative ways as well. But then I think the thing that we've talked a lot about is this sort of idea that a lot of what the model does isn't simply how is it saying the next thing. We talked about it a little bit here. It's sort of planning a few things again, a few words ahead. Sorry, and I think we want to understand sort of over a long conversation with the model, sort of how is its understanding of what's happening changing? How is its understanding of who it's talking to changing? And how does that affect its behavior? More and more, sort of the actual use case of models like Claude is, it's going to read a bunch of your documents and a bunch of email you send or your code, and based on that, it's going to make one suggestion. And so clearly, there's something really important happening in that space where it's reading all these things. And so I think understanding that better seems like a great challenge to take on.
Yeah, I think we often use the analogy on the team of that we're building a microscope to look at the model, and right now we're in this exciting but also kind of frustrating space where our microscope works like 20% of the time, and like looking through it is like requires a lot of skill and like takes you have to like build this whole big contraption, and like infrastructure is always breaking, and then like once you've got your like explanation of what the model's doing, you have to like throw like, Emmanuel or me or someone else in the team in a room for like 2 hours to like puzzle out what exactly was going on. And like the really exciting future that I think we could be at within year or 2 years, that kind of time scale is one where like just every interaction you have with the model can be under the microscope. Like we can just anytime there's all these weird things the models are doing, and we just want it to be like push of a button, like you're having your conversation, you push a button, you get this flow chart that tells you like what it was thinking about. And once we're at that point, it'll be this like I think the interpretability team at Anthropic I think will start to kind of take on a bit of a different shape, in that instead of this like team of kind of like engineers, scientists thinking about the like math of how like language models work on the inside, we're gonna have this like army of biologists that are just looking through the microscope. We're talking to Claude, we're getting it to do weird things, and then we're just like we got people looking through the microscope, seeing like what it was thinking on the inside. And I think that's kind of the future of this work.
Maybe two notes on that. One is like we want Claude to help us do all of that, because like there's a lot of parts involved, and who's like good at like looking at like hundreds of things and figuring out what's going on is like Claude. And so I think we're trying to enlist some help there, especially for this complicated context. Maybe the other place is like we talked a lot about studying the model like once it's fully formed, but of course like we're a company that makes these, and so when it says okay, here's how the model like solved this particular problem or said this thing, where did it come from kind of in the training process? What are the steps that sort of like made that circuitry sort of form to do that, and how could we give feedback to the rest of the company that is like doing all of that work to shape the thing that we are actually wanting to become?
Well, thank you so much for the conversation. Where can people find out more about this research?
So if you want to find out more, you can go to anthropic.com/research, which has our papers and blog posts and fun videos about it. Also, we recently partnered with another group called Neuronpedia to host some of these like circuit graphs we make. So if you want to try your hand at looking at what's going on inside of a small model, you can go to Neuronpedia and see for yourself.
Thank you very much.
Why are we working on AI in the first place? I'm just going to arbitrarily pick Jared. Why are you doing AI at all?
I mean, I was working on physics for a long time, and I got bored, and I wanted to hang out with more of my friends. So.
Yeah, I thought Dario pitched you on.
I don't think I explicitly pitched you at any point. I just kind of like showed you results of like AI models, and was trying to make the point that like they're very general and like they don't only apply to one thing, and like just at some point after I showed you enough of them, you were like, oh yeah, that seems like it's right.
How long have you been a professor before, like when you started?
I think like 6 years or so. I think I helped recruit Sam. I talked to you and you were like, I think I've created a good bubble here, and like my goal is to get Tom to come back. That it worked.
And did you meet everyone through Google when you were doing the interpretability stuff, Chris?
No, so I guess I actually met a bunch of you when I was 19 and I was visiting the Bay Area for the first time. So I guess I met Dario and Jared then, and I guess they were postdocs, which I thought was very cool at the time. And then I was working at Google Brain, and Dario joined, and we sat side by side actually for a while. We had desks beside each other, and I worked with Tom there as well. And then of course I went to work with all of you at OpenAI when I went there.
Yeah.
So I guess I've known a lot of you for like more than a decade, which is kind of wild.
If I remember correctly, I met Dario in 2015 when I went to a conference you were at, and I tried to interview you, and Google PR said they would have read all of your research papers.
This sleeve for the Blue Eyes White Dragon is way too hard to get out, so I'm gonna have to cut it open. Hopefully this works. Okay, I have to cut it open. Yeah, it's not so bad. It's definitely not a 10. There's some scratches and smudges on it. Probably a 9 though, 9 or 8. I spent quite a lot on this one card though. The back is very good. The front is not as good. But still pretty for the card. There's a smudge here as well.
AI signal when I was at Google. I think you wrote a story about that paper.
I did.
I remember right before I started working with you, like we had I think you invited me to the office to like come chat and just like tell me everything about AI, and you like explained. I remember afterwards being like, oh, I guess this stuff is much more serious than I realized. And you were like probably explaining the big block compute and like parameter counting and how many neurons are in the brain, everything.
I feel like Dario often has that happen. What was this much more serious than I realized?
Yeah, I'm the bringer of happy tidings.
But I remember when we were at OpenAI, where there was the scaling law stuff and just making things bigger, and it started to feel like it was working, and then it kind of kept on eerily working on a bunch of different projects, which I think is how we all ended up working closely together, because it was first GPT-2, and then scaling laws and GPT-3, and we ended up
we're the block of people that make things work.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're also excited about safety because in that era there was sort of this idea that AI would become very powerful, but like potentially not understand human values or not even be able to communicate with us. And so I think we're all like pretty excited about language models as a way to kind of guarantee that AI systems would have to understand kind of implicit knowledge that.
And RL from human feedback on top of language models, which was the whole reason for scaling these models up was that the models weren't smart enough to do RLHF on top of. So that's the kind of intertwinement of safety and scaling of the models that we still believe in today.
I think there was also an element of like the scaling work was done as part of the safety team that Dario started at OpenAI because forecasting AI trends was important to be able to have us take them seriously and take safety seriously as a problem.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being in some airport in England sampling from GPT-2 and using it to write fake news articles and slacking Dario and being like, oh, this stuff actually works and might have like huge policy implications. I think Dario said something like, yes. It's a way. But then we worked on that a bunch as well as the release stuff, which was very file.
Yeah, I remember the release stuff. I think that was when we first started working together.
Yeah.
That was a fun time. It didn't take too long.
Yeah, but I think it was good for us because we did a kind of slightly strange safety-oriented thing altogether, and then we ended up doing Anthropic, which is a much larger, slightly strange safety-oriented thing.
That's right.
So I guess it's like going back to the concrete problems, because I remember, so I joined OpenAI like 2016, like one of the first 20 employees or whatever with you, Dario, and I remember at that time the like concrete problems in AI safety seemed like it was like the first like mainstream like AI safety paper. I guess I don't really know if I ever asked you what the story was for like how that came about.
Chris knows the story because he was involved in it. I think we were both at Google. I forget what other project I was working on, but like with many things, it was my attempt to kind of procrastinate from whatever other project I was working on that I've now completely forgotten what it was. But I think it was like Chris and I decided to write down what are some open problems in terms of AI safety. And also,
Okay, the fucking sleeve for that, it's not a perfect condition card. I have to fucking cut it open because it's so hard to open it. But other than that, it's probably a 8 or 9 or 7.
AI safety usually talked about in this very kind of abstruse, abstract way, and we kind of grounded in the ML that was going on at the time. I mean, now there's been like 6-7 years of work in that vein, but there was almost a trend at that time.
Yeah, I think the way it was almost a like kind of political project, where at the time a lot of people didn't take safety seriously. So I think that there was sort of this goal to collate a list of problems that sort of people agree were reasonable, often already existed in literature, and then get a bunch of people across different institutions who were credible to be authors. And like I remember,
This guy talks like Sam Altman.
To, like 20 different researchers at Brain to build support for publishing the paper. Like in some ways, if you look at it in terms of the problems and a lot of things that emphasize, I think it hasn't held up that well. In that it's, I think it's not really the right problem. But I think if you sort of see it instead as a consensus building exercise, that there's something here that is real and is worth taking seriously, then it was a pretty important moment.
I mean, you end up in this really weird sci-fi world. I remember at the start of Anthropic, we were talking about constitutional AI, and I think Garrett said, oh, we're just going to write like a constitution for a language model and that'll change all of its behavior. And I remember that sounded like incredibly crazy at the time. But why did you guys think that was going to work? Because I remember that was one of the first early like big research ideas we had.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dario and I had talked about it for a while. I guess I think simple things just work really, really well in AI, and so like I think the first versions of that were like quite complicated, but then we kind of like whittled away into like just use the fact that AI systems are good at solving multiple choice exams and like give them a prompt that tells them like what they're looking for, and that was kind of a lot of what we needed. And then we were able to just write down these principles.
I mean, it goes back to like the big blob of computer bitter lesson and the scaling hypothesis. If you can identify, something that you can give the AI data for, and that's kind of a clear target, you'll get it to do it. So like, here's this set of instructions, here's this set of principles. AI language models can like read that set of principles and they can like compare it to the behavior that they themselves are engaging in. So like, you got your training target there. So once you know that, I think my view and Jared's view is there's a way to get it to work. You just have to fiddle with enough of the details.
Yeah, I think it was always weird for me, especially in the early days, like I was in physics and then coming from physics, and I think now we forget about this because everyone's excited about AI. But like, I remember talking to Dario about concrete problems and other things, and I just got the sense that AI researchers were very, very kind of psychologically damaged by the AI winter, where they just kind of felt like having like really ambitious ideas or ambitious visions was like very disallowed. And that's kind of how I imagine it was in terms of talking about safety. In order to care about safety, is to believe that AI systems can actually be really powerful and really useful. And I think that like there was kind of a prohibition against being ambitious. And I think one of the benefits is that physicists are very arrogant.
Oh,
what
the hell is
really
this?
ambitious things and talking about things in terms of grand schemes. And so yeah.
I mean, I think that's definitely true. Like I remember in 2014, it was like there were just like, I don't know, there were just like some things you couldn't say, right? But I actually think it is.
The hell, man! I've never seen someone pack. They put the cards inside a booster pack. Although it's an interesting one, I wouldn't buy this. Although the way they package this booster pack is actually quite interesting. Ah. Okay. Oh, these random cards they gave me. What is this card? Oh, Exodia. Exodia the Forbidden One. It's not good condition. It's very bad condition, Exodia. Exodia the Forbidden One. Okay.
It's kind of an extension of problems that exist across academia, other than maybe theoretical physics, where they kind of evolved into very risk-averse institutions for a number of reasons, and even in some kind of beneficial way. That was how I came to it, and that led to working on AI. And AI required a lot of engineering, and eventually AI required a lot of capital. But what I found was that if you don't do this in a way where you're setting the environment, where you set up the company, then a lot of it gets done. A lot of it repeats the same mistakes that I found so alienating about the tech community. It's the same people, it's the same attitude, it's the same pattern matching, and so at some point it just seemed inevitable that we need to do it a different way.
When we were hanging out in graduate school, I remember you had kind of this whole like program of trying to figure out how to do science in a way that would sort of advance the public good, and I think that's like pretty similar to how we think about this. Maybe you had like this like Project Vannevar or something to do that. I was a professor. I think basically I just looked at the situation and I was convinced that AI was on a very, very, very steep trajectory in terms of impact. Didn't seem like because of the necessity for capital, like as a physics professor, I could continue doing that, and I kind of wanted to work with people that I trusted in building an institution to try to make kind of AI go well. But yeah, I would never recommend founding a company or really want to do it. I mean, yeah, I think it's just a means to an end. I think that's like usually how things go well, though. If you're doing something just to sort of like enrich yourself or gain power, or like you have to sort of actually care about accomplishing a real goal in the world, and then you find whatever means you have to.
Well, something I think about a lot is just a strategic advantage for us is, I mean, it sounds really funny to say, but just like how much trust there is at this table, right? Like I think that's not, I mean, Tom, you were at other startups. I was never a founder before, but it's actually really hard to get a group of, like a big group of people to have like the same mission, right? And I think the thing that I feel like the happiest about when I come into work, I'm probably most proud of at Anthropic, is how well that has scaled to a lot of people. It feels to me like in this group and with the rest of leadership, everyone is here for a mission, and our mission is really clear, and it's very pure, right? And I think that is something that I don't see as often, to Darius' point, in sort of the tech industry. It feels like there's just a wholesomeness to what we're trying to do. Like, no, I agree, like none of us were like, let's just go found a company. I felt like we had to do it, right? It just felt like we couldn't keep doing what we were doing the place we were doing it. We had to do it by ourselves.
And it felt like with GPT-3, you know, which all of us have like touched or worked on, and scaling laws and everything else, we could see it in front of us in 2020, and it felt like, well, if we don't do something like soon altogether, you're going to hit the point of no return, and you have to do something to have any ability to change the environment.
I think building up Danielle, I do think that there's just like a lot of trust in this group. I think like each of us knows that we got into this because we want to help out with the world.
Yeah.
We did the like 80% pledge thing, and I was like, I think that everybody was just like, yes, obviously we're going to do this.
Yeah.
It was, and I do think that the trust thing is a special thing that's extremely rare.
Yeah.
I credit Daniela with like keeping the bar high. I credit
Keeping
you
out
with
the
faculty
clowns.
skills.
Keeping out the clowns. That's
It's loud, right? That's what
It gives it a culture scale, I think.
Yeah, people say how nice people are here,
Yeah.
which is actually a wildly important thing.
I think Anthropic is really low politics. And of course, we all have a different vantage point than average, and I try to remember
Because
that.
it's low ego.
But it's low ego, and I do think our interview process and just the type of people who work here, like, there's almost a like allergic reaction to politics.
And unity. Unity is so important. The idea that the product team, the research team, the trust and safety team, you know, the go-to-market team, the policy team, like that, the safety folks, they're all trying to contribute to kind of the same goal, the same mission of the company, right? I think it's dysfunctional when different parts of the company are think they're trying to accomplish different things. Think the company is about different things, or think that other parts of the company are trying to undermine what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing we've managed to preserve is, and again, things like the RSP drive it. This idea that it's not, you know, there's some parts of the company causing damage and other parts of the company trying to repair it, but that there are different parts of the company doing different functions, and they all function under a single theory of change.
Extreme pragmatism, right?
Yeah.
You know, the reason I went to OpenAI in the first place, you know, it was a non-profit. It was a place where I could go and focus on safety. And I think over time, you know, that maybe wasn't as good a fit, and there were some difficult decisions. And I think in a lot of ways, I really trusted Dario and Danielle on that. But I didn't want to leave. That was like something that I think I was actually like pretty reluctant to go along with, because I think for one thing, I know that it was good for the world to have more AI labs, and I think it was something that I was pretty reluctant for. And I think as well, when we did leave, I think I was, you know, I was reluctant to start a company. I was like, I think I was arguing for a long time that we should do a non-profit instead and just focus on safety research. And I think it really took pragmatism and confronting the constraints and just being honest about what the constraints implied for accomplishing that mission that led to Anthropic.
I think just a really important lesson that we were good about early on is like make less promises and keep more of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like try to be calibrated, be realistic, confront the trade-offs, because you know trust and credibility are more important than any particular policy.
It is so unusual to have what we have. And watching like Mike Krieger defend safety things, or like reasons why we shouldn't ship a product yet, but also then to watch Vinay sort of say like, okay, we have to do the right thing with the business, like how do we get this across the finish line? And to hear, you know, people like deep in the technical safety work talking about how it's also important that we build things that are practical for people, and hearing, you know, engineers on inference talk about safety, that's amazing. Like I think that is again one of the most special things about working here is everybody with that unity is prioritizing the pragmatism, the safety of the business. That's wild.
I think about it as the model doesn't think of itself necessarily as trying to predict the next word. Internally, it's developed potentially all sorts of intermediate goal.
the way LLMs are trained is that you take a piece of text, you remove some of the words in that text, you mask them, you replace it by blank markers, and you train a gigantic neural net to predict the words that are missing. And if you build this neural net in a particular way, so that it can only look at words that are to the left of the one it's trying to predict, then what you have is a system that basically is trying to predict the next word in the text, right? So then you can feed it a text, a prompt, and you can ask it to predict the next word. It can never predict the next word exactly. And so what it's going to do is produce a probability distribution over all the possible words in a dictionary. In fact, it doesn't predict words, it predicts tokens that are kind of subword units. And so it's easy to handle the uncertainty in the prediction there because there's only a finite number of possible words in the dictionary, and you can just compute the distribution over them. Then what the system does is that it picks a word from that distribution. Of course, there's a high chance of picking words that have a higher probability within that distribution. So you sample from that distribution to actually produce a word. And then you shift that word into the input. And so that allows the system now to predict the second word, right? And once you do this, you shift it into the input, etc. That's called autoregressive prediction, which is why those LLMs should be called autoregressive LLMs. But we just call them LLMs.
The following is a conversation all about the state of the art in artificial intelligence, including some of the exciting technical breakthroughs and developments in AI that happened over the past year, and some of the interesting things we think might happen this upcoming year. At times, it does get super technical, but we do try to make sure that it remains accessible to folks outside the field without ever dumbing it down. It is a great honor and pleasure to be able to do this kind of episode with two of my favorite people in the AI community, Sebastian Raschke and Nathan Lambert. They are both widely respected machine learning researchers and engineers who also happen to be great communicators, educators, writers, and Twitterers, ex-posters. Sebastian is the author of 2 books I highly recommend for beginners and experts alike. First is Build a Large Language Model from Scratch, and Build a Reasoning Model from Scratch. I truly believe in the machine learning computer science world, the best way to learn and understand something is to build it yourself, from scratch. Nathan is the post-training lead at the Allen Institute for AI and author of the definitive book on reinforcement learning from human feedback. Both of them have great X accounts, great Substacks. Sebastian has courses on YouTube, Nathan has a podcast, and everyone should absolutely follow all of those. This is the Lex Friedman Podcast. To support it, please check out our sponsors in the description, where you can also find links to contact me, ask questions, get feedback, and so on. And now, dear friends, here's Sebastian Raschke and Nathan Lambert. So I think one useful lens to look at all of this through is the DeepSeek, so-called DeepSeek moment. This happened about a year ago, January 2025, when the open-weight Chinese company DeepSeek released DeepSeek R1 that I think it's fair to say surprised everyone with near or at state-of-the-art performance, with allegedly much less compute for much cheaper. And from then to today, the AI competition has gotten insane, both on the research level and the product level. It's just been accelerating. Let's discuss all of this today, and maybe let's start with some spicy questions if we can. Who's winning at the international level? Would you say it's the set of companies in China or the set of companies in the United States? And Sebastian, Nathan, it's good to see you guys. So Sebastian, who do you think is winning?
So winning is a very broad, term. I would say you mentioned the DeepSeek moment, and I do think DeepSeek is definitely winning the hearts of the people who work on open weight models because they share these as open models. Winning, I think, has multiple timescales to it. We have today, we have next year, we have in 10 years. One thing I know for sure is that I don't think nowadays, 2026, that there will be any company who is, let's say, having access to a technology that no other company has access to. And that is mainly because researchers are frequently changing jobs, changing labs, they rotate. So I don't think there will be a clear winner in terms of technology access. However, I do think there will be the differentiating factor will be budget and hardware constraints. So I don't think the ideas will be proprietary, but the way or the resources that are needed to implement them. And so I don't see currently the take-it-all scenario where a winner takes it all. I can't see that at the moment.
Nathan, what do you think?
You see the labs put different energy into what they're trying to do, and I think to demarcate the point in time when we're recording this, the hype over Anthropic's Claude Opus 4.5 model has been absolutely insane, which is just, I mean, I've used it, I've built stuff in the last few weeks, and it's almost gotten to the point where it feels like a bit of a meme in terms of the hype, and it's kind of funny because this is very organic, and then if we go back a few months ago, we can get the release date in the notes as Gemini 3 from Google got released, and it seemed like the marketing and just like wow factor of that release was super high, but then at the end of November, Claude Opus 4.5 was released, and the hype has been growing, but Gemini 3 was before this, and it kind of feels like people don't really talk about it as much, even though when it came out, everybody was like, this is Gemini's moment to retake kind of Google's structural advantages in AI, and Gemini 3 is a fantastic model, and I still use it, it's just kind of differentiation is lower, and I agree with Sebastian what you're saying with all these, like the idea space is very fluid, but culturally Anthropic is known for betting very hard on code, which this Claude Code thing is working out for them right now. So I think that even if the ideas flow pretty freely, so much of this is bottlenecked by human effort and kind of culture of organizations, where Anthropic seems to at least be presenting as the least chaotic. It's a bit of an advantage, and if they can keep doing that for a while, But on the other side of things, there's a lot of ominous technology from China where there's way more labs than DeepSeek. So DeepSeek kicked off a movement within China, I say kind of similar to how ChatGPT kicked off a movement in the US where everything had a chatbot. And there's now tons of tech companies in China that are releasing very strong frontier open weight models, to the point where I would say that DeepSeek is kind of losing its crown as the preeminent open model maker in China, and the likes of Z.AI's with their GLM models, Minimax's models, Kimi Moonshot, especially in the last few months, has shown more brightly. The new DeepSeek models are still very strong, but that's kind of it could look back as a big narrative point where in 2025 DeepSeek came, and then and it kind of provided this platform for way more Chinese companies that are releasing these fantastic models to kind of have this new type of operation. So these models from these Chinese companies are open weights, and depending on this trajectory of business models that these American companies are doing, could be at risk. But currently, a lot of people are paying for AI software in the US, and historically in China and other parts of the world, people don't pay a lot for software.
So some of these models like DeepSeek have the love of the people because they are open weight. How long do you think the Chinese companies keep releasing open weight models?
I would say for a few years. I think that, like in the US, there's not a clear business model for it. I have been writing about open models for a while, and these Chinese companies have realized it, so I get inbound from some of them. And they're smart and realize the same constraints, which is that a lot of US tech companies and other IT companies won't pay for an API subscription to Chinese companies for security concerns. This has been a long-standing habit in tech. And the people at these companies then see open weight models as an ability to influence and take part of a huge growing AI expenditure market in the US. And they're very realistic about this. And it's working for them, and I think that the government will see that that is building a lot of influence internationally in terms of updating the technology, so there's going to be a lot of incentives to keep it going, but building these models and doing the research is very expensive, so at some point I expect consolidation, but I don't expect that to be a story of 2026, where there will be more open model builders throughout 2026 than there were in 2025, and a lot of the notable ones will be in China.
You were going to say something?
Yes, you mentioned DeepSeek losing its crown. I do think, to some extent, yes, but we also have to consider, though, they are still, I would say, slightly ahead in the other ones. It's not that DeepSeek got worse, it's just like the other ones are using the ideas from DeepSeek. For example, you mentioned Kimi, the same architecture, they're training it, and then again we have this leapfrogging where they might be at some point in time a bit better because they have the more recent model. And I think this comes back to the fact that there won't be a clear winner. It will just be like that. And one person releases something, the other one comes in, and the most recent model is probably always the best model.
Yeah, we'll also see that Chinese companies have different incentives. So like DeepSeek is very secretive, where some of these startups are like the Minimaxes and Z.AI's of the world. Those two literally have filed IPO paperwork, and they're trying to get Western mindshare and do a lot of outreach there. So I don't know if these incentives will kind of change the model development, because DeepSeek famously is built by a hedge fund, High Flyer Capital, and we don't know exactly what we don't know what they use the models for or if they care about this.
They're secret in terms of communication. They're not secret in terms of the technical reports that describe how their models work. They're still open on that front. And we should also say on the Opus 4.5 hype, there's the layer of something being the darling of the X echo chamber on Twitter echo chamber, and the actual amount of people that are using the model. I think it's probably fair to say that ChatGPT and Gemini are focused on the broad user base that just want to solve problems in their daily lives, and that user base is gigantic. So the hype about the coding may not be representative of the actual use.
I would say also a lot of usage patterns are, like you said, name recognition, brand, and stuff, but also muscle memory almost, where, like ChatGPT has been around for a long time, people just got used to using it, and it's kind of like almost like a flywheel they recommend to other users and that stuff. But one interesting point is also the customization of LLMs. For example, ChatGPT has a memory feature, right? And so you may have a subscription and you use it for personal stuff, but I don't know if you want to use that same thing at work, because it's a boundary between private and work. If you're working at a company, they might not allow it, or you may not want that. And I think that's also an interesting point where you might have multiple subscriptions. One is just clean code, it has nothing of your personal images that you, or hobby projects in there, it's just like the work thing, and then the other one is your personal thing. So I think that's also something where two different use cases, and it doesn't mean you only have to have one. I think the future is also multiple ones.
What model do you think won 2025, and what model do you think is going to win 26?
I think in the context of a consumer chatbots is a question of, are you willing to bet on Gemini over ChatGPT, which I would say in my gut feels like a bit of a risky bet, because OpenAI has been the incumbent and there's so many benefits to that in tech. But I think that momentum, if you look in 2025, was on Gemini's side, but they were starting from such a low point. I think RIP Bard and these earlier attempts of getting started, I think huge credit for them for powering through the organizational chaos to make that happen. But also hard to bet against OpenAI, because they always come up as so chaotic, but they're very good at landing things. And I think personally, I have very mixed reviews of GPT-5, but it have saved them so much money, with the headline feature being a router where most users are no longer charging their GPU costs as much. So I think it's very hard to dissociate the things that I like out of models versus the things that are going to actually be a general public differentiator.
What do you think about 2026?
I'll say something even though it's risky. I will say that I think Gemini will continue to take progress on ChatGPT. I think Google scale when both of these are operating at such extreme scales, and Google has the ability to separate that research and product a bit better. We hear so much about OpenAI being chaotic operationally and chasing the high impact thing, which is a very startup culture. And then on the software and enterprise side, I think Anthropic will have continued to success as they've again and again been set up for that. And obviously Google's Cloud has a lot of offerings, but I think this kind of like Gemini name brand is important for them to build. And Google's Cloud will continue to do well, but that's kind of a more complex thing to explain in the ecosystem, because that's competing with the likes of Azure and AWS rather than on the model provider side.
So in infrastructure, you think GPUs give an advantage?
Largely because the margin on NVIDIA chips is insane, and Google can develop everything from top to bottom to fit their stack and not have to pay this margin, and they've had a head start in building data centers. So all of these things that have both high lead times and very hard margins on high costs, Google has just kind of a historical advantage there. And if there's going to be a new paradigm, it's most likely to come from OpenAI, where their research division again and again has kind of shown this ability to land a new research idea or a product. I think like deep research, Sora, O1 thinking models, like all of these definitional things have come from OpenAI, and that's got to be one of their top traits as an organization. So it's kind of hard to bet against that, but I think a lot of this year will be about scale and optimizing what can be described as low-hanging fruit in models.
And clearly, there's a trade-off between intelligence and speed. This is what ChatGPT 5 was trying to solve behind the scenes. It's like, do people actually want intelligence, the broad public, or do they want speed?
I think it's a nice variety, actually, or the option to have a toggle there. I mean, first, for my personal usage, most of the time when I look something up, I use ChatGPT to ask a quick question, get the information I wanted fast. For, most daily tasks, I use the quick model. Nowadays, I think the auto mode is pretty good, where you don't have to specifically say thinking or, non-thinking and stuff. Then again, I also sometimes want the pro mode. Very often what I do is when I have something written, I put it into ChatGPT and say, hey, do a very thorough check. Are all my references correct? Are all my thoughts correct? Did I make any formatting mistakes? And are the figure numbers wrong or something like that? And I don't need that right away. It's something, okay, I finish my stuff, maybe have dinner, let it run, come back and go through this. And I think, this is where I think it's important to have this option. I would go crazy if for each query I would have to wait 30 minutes or 10 minutes.
That's me. Yeah. I'm like saying over here, losing my mind that you use the router and the non-thinking model. I'm like, how do you live with that? Yeah. It's like my reaction. I've been heavily on ChatGPT for a while. Never touched 5 non-thinking. I find its tone and then its propensity of errors. It's just like has a higher likelihood of errors. Some of this is from back when OpenAI released O3, which was the first model to do this deep search and find any sources and integrate them for you. So I became habituated with that. So I will only use GPT 5.2 Thinking or Pro when I'm finding any sort of information query for work, whether that's a paper or some code reference that I found. And it's just like, I will regularly have like 5 pro queries going simultaneously, each looking for one specific paper or feedback on an equation or something.
I have a fun example where I just needed the answer as fast as possible. For this podcast, before I was going on the trip, I have like a local GPU running at home, and I wanted to run a long RL experiment. And usually I also unplug things, because you never know if you're not at home, you don't want to have things plugged in. And I accidentally unplugged the GPU. It was like my wife was already in the car, and it's like, oh dang. And then basically I wanted as fast as possible a bash script that runs my different experiments and evaluation. And it's something I know I learned how to use the bash interface or bash terminal, but in that moment I just needed like 10 seconds, give me the command.
It's a hilarious situation, but yeah, so what did you use?
So I did the non-thinking fastest model. It gave me the bash command to chain different scripts to each other. And then the thing is, like, you have the T thing where you want to route this to a log file. Top of my head, I was just like in a hurry. I could have thought about it.
By the way, I don't know if there's a representative case, like waiting in the car, you have to run, you have to plug the GPU, you have to generate a bash script. It sounds like a movie, like Mission Impossible.
I use Gemini for that. So I use Thinking for all the information stuff, and then Gemini for fast things, for stuff that I could sometimes Google. It's just like it's good at explaining things, and I trust that it has this kind of background of knowledge, and it's simple. And the Gemini app got a lot better, and it's good for that sort of things. And then for code and any sort of philosophical discussion, I use Claude Opus 4.5. Also, always with extended thinking. Extended thinking and inference time scaling is just a way to make models marginally smarter, and I will always edge on that side when the hardness is very high, because you don't know when they'll unlock a new use case. And then sometimes use Grok for real-time information, or finding something on AI Twitter that I saw and I need to dig up and I'm just fixated on. Although when Grok 4 came out, the Grok 4 was super heavy, which was like their pro variant, was actually very good, and I was pretty impressed with it. And I just kind of like muscle memory lost track of it with having the ChatGPT app open. So I use many different things.
Yeah, I actually do use Grok 4 heavy for debugging, for like hardcore debugging, and the other ones can't solve it. I find that it's the best hat. And it's interesting because you say ChatGPT is the best interface. For me, for that same reason, but this could be just momentum. Gemini is the better interface for me. I think because I fell in love with their best needle in the haystack. If I ever put something that has a lot of context, but I'm looking for very specific kind of information, make sure it tracks all of it. I find, at least, the Gemini for me has been the best. So it's funny with some of these models, if they win your heart over for one particular feature on one particular day, for that particular query, that prompt, you're like, this model is better. And so you'll just stick with it for a bit until it does something really dumb. There's like a threshold effect. Some smart thing, and then you fall in love with it, and it does some dumb thing, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to switch and try Claude or ChatGPT and all that kind of stuff.
This is exactly like, you use it until it breaks, until you have a problem, and then you change the editor. And I think it's the same how we use anything, like our favorite text editor, operating systems, or the browser. I mean, there are so many browser options, Safari, Firefox, Chrome, all the relatively similar, but then there are edge cases, maybe extensions you want to use, and then you switch. But I don't think there is any one who types the same thing, like the website, into different browsers and compares them. You only do that when the website doesn't render if something breaks, I think. So that's a good point. I think you use it until it breaks, and then you explore other options, I think.
On the long context thing, I was also a Gemini user for this, but the GPT 5.2 release blog had like crazy long context scores where a lot of people were like, did they just figure out some algorithmic change? It went from like 30% to like 70% or something in this minor model update. So it's also very hard to keep track of all of these things. But now I'm looking more favorably at GPT 5.2's long context. So it's just kind of like, how do I actually get to testing this? It's never-ending battle.
It's interesting that none of us talked about the Chinese models from a user usage perspective. What does that say? Does that mean the Chinese models are not as good, or does that mean we're just very biased and US focused?
I think that is currently the discrepancy between just the model and the platform. So I think the open models, they are more known for the open weights, not the platform yet.
There are also a lot of companies that are willing to sell you the open model inference at a very low cost. I think like OpenRouter, it's easy to do the look at multiple model things. You can run DeepSeek on Perplexity. I think all of us sitting here are like, we use OpenAI GPT-5 Pro consistently. We're all willing to pay for the marginal intelligence gain. And anyone that's like these models in the US are better in terms of outputs. I think the question is, will they stay better for this year and for years going? But it's like, so long as they're better, I'm going to pay for it to use them. And there's also analysis that shows that the way that the Chinese models are served, you could argue due to expert controls or not, is that they use fewer GPUs per replica, which makes them slower and have different errors. And it's like the speed and intelligence. If these things are in your favor as a user, I think in the US a lot of users will go for this. And I think that is something that will spur these Chinese companies to want to compete in other ways, whether it's free or substantially lower costs, or it'll breed creativity in terms of offerings, which is good for the ecosystem. But I just think the simple thing is that US models are currently better, and we use them. And I try these other open models, and I'm like, fun, but I don't go back to it.
We didn't really mention programming. That's another use case that a lot of people deeply care about. So I use basically half and half Cursor and Claude Code because I find them to be like fundamentally different experiences, and both useful. What do you program quite a bit? So what do you use? What's the current vibe?
So I use the Codex plugin for VS Code. It's very convenient. It's just like a plugin, and then it's a chat interface that has access to your repository. I know that Claude Code is, I think, a bit different. It is a bit more agentic. It touches more things. It does the whole project for you. I'm not quite there yet where I'm comfortable with that because maybe I'm a control freak, but I still would like to see a bit what's going on. And Codex is kind of like right now for me like the sweet spot where it is helping me, but it is not taking completely over.
I should mention one of the reasons I do use Claude Code is to build the skill of programming with English. I mean, the experience is fundamentally different. You're, as opposed to micromanaging the details of the process of the generation of the code and looking at the diff, which you can in Cursor, if that's the IDE you use, and in changing, altering, looking and reading the code and understanding the code deeply as you progress, versus just kind of like thinking in this design space and just guiding it at this macro level, which I think is another way of thinking about the programming process. Also, we should say that Claude Code, it just seems to be somehow a better utilization of Cloud Opus 4.5.
It's a good side-by-side for people to do. So you can have Claude Code open, you can have Cursor open, you can have VS Code open, and you can select the same models on all of them and ask questions. And it's very interesting. Like the Claude Code is way better in that. It's more cool.
All right, we should say that both of you are legit on multiple fronts: researchers, programmers, educators, tweeters, and on the book front too. So Nathan, at some point soon, hopefully, has an RLHF book coming out.
It's available for pre-order, and there's a full digital preprint. I'm just making it pretty and better organized for the physical thing. I just modify and do it because it's fun to create things that you think are excellent in physical form when so much of our life is digital.
I should say, going to Perplexity here, Sebastian Roschke is a machine learning researcher and author known for several influential books. A couple of them that I wanted to mention, which is a book I highly recommend, Build a Large Language Model from Scratch, and the new one, Build a Reasoning Model from Scratch. So I'm really excited about that. Building stuff from scratch is one of the most powerful ways of learning.
Honestly, building an LLM from scratch is a lot of fun. It's also a lot to learn, and like you said, it's probably the best way to learn how something really works, because you can look at figures, but figures can have mistakes. You can look at concepts and explanations, but you might misunderstand them. But if you see the code, there is code, and the code works, you know it's correct. I mean, there's no misunderstanding. It's like it's precise, otherwise it wouldn't work. And I think that's like kind of like the beauty behind coding. It is kind of like it doesn't lie. It's math basically. So even though with math, I think you can have mistakes in the book you would never notice because you're not running the math when you're reading the book. You can't verify this in the code. But what's nice is you can verify it.
Yeah, I agree with you about the LLM from scratch, but it's nice to tune out everything else on the internet and so on and just what's in the book. But you know, I read several history books. It's just less lonely somehow. It's really more fun. Like, for example, the programming stuff, I think it's genuinely more fun to program with an LLM. And I think it's genuinely more fun to read with an LLM. But you're right, like, the distraction should be minimized. You use the LLM to basically enrich the experience, maybe add more context. Maybe the rate of aha moments for me in a small scale is really high with LLMs.
100%. I also want to correct myself. I'm not suggesting not to use LLMs. I suggest doing it in multiple passes. Like one pass, just offline, focus mode, and then after that, I also take notes. But I try to resist the urge to immediately look things up. I do a second pass. It's just like for me more structured this way, and I get led. I mean, sometimes things are answered in the chapter, but sometimes also it just helps to let it sink in and think about it. Other people have different preferences. I would highly recommend using LLMs when reading books. For me, it's not the first thing to do. It's like the second pass.
By way of recommendation, as I said, I do the opposite. I like to use the LLM at the beginning to lay out the full context of like what is this world that I'm now stepping into. But I try to avoid clicking out of the LLM into the world of like Twitter, blogs, because then you're now down this rabbit hole. You're reading somebody's opinion. There's a flame war about a particular topic, and all of a sudden you're now in the realm of the internet and Reddit and so on. But if you're purely letting the LLM give you the context of why this matters, what are the big picture ideas, but sometimes books themselves are good at doing that, but not always. So.
This is why I like the ChatGPT app, because it gives the AI a home in your computer when you can focus on it, rather than just being another tab in my mess of internet options. And I think Claude Code and these in particular does a good job of making that as well, where it seems very engaging the product design to be an interface that your AI will then go out into the world. It is something that's very kind of intangible between it and Codex, is that it just feels kind of warm and engaging, where Codex can often be as good for OpenAI, but it just kind of like feels a little bit rougher on the edges, whereas the cloud code is like make it and build things particularly from scratch, where you just don't, like, you don't have to care, but you trust that it'll make something. Like obviously it's good for websites and kind of refreshing tooling and stuff like this. It's like use it for data analysis. So not very time-based when it comes to download numbers for every data set and model over time now. So we have that, and it's like Claude is just like, yeah, I made use of that data, no problem. And I was like, that would have taken me days. And it's like, then I have enough situational awareness to be like, okay, these terms obviously make sense, and you can check things. So that's just a kind of wonderful interface where you can have an intermediary and not have to do the kind of awful low-level work that you would have to do to maintain different web projects and do this stuff.
All right, so we just talked about a bunch of the closed weight models. Let's talk about the open ones. So tell me about the landscape of open LM models. Which are interesting ones, which stand out to you, and why? We already mentioned DeepSeek.
Do you want to see how many we can name off the top of our head?
Yeah, without looking at notes.
DeepSeek, Kimi, Minimax, Z.ai, Ling. We're just
This
going
one.
Let's throw in Mistral AI Gemma. Yeah, GPT OSS, the open source model by ChatGPT. Actually, NVIDIA Nemotron had a very cool one, Nemotron 3. There's a lot of stuff, especially at the end of the year. Quen, one maybe the one.
Oh yeah, Quen was the obvious thing. I was trying to get to you can get at least 10 Chinese and at least 10 Western. I think that. I mean, OpenAI released their first open model since GPT-2. That was when I was writing about OpenAI's open model release. They're all like, "Don't forget about GPT-2," which I thought was really funny. It's just such a different time. But GPT OSS is actually a very strong model and does some things that the other models don't do very well. And I think that selfishly, I'll promote a bunch of like Western companies. So both in the US and Europe have these like fully open models. So I work at Allen Institute for AI. We've been building Olmo, which releases data and code and all of this. And now we have actual competition for people that are trying to release everything so that other people can train these models. So there's the Institute for Foundation Models or slash 360, which is like had their K2 models of various.
So this one is mega good condition. We can talk about LM models.
Aperdis is a Swiss research consortium. Hugging Face has small LM, which is very popular. NVIDIA's Nemotron has started releasing data as well. And then Stanford's Marin Community Project, which is kind of making it so there's a pipeline for people to open a GitHub issue and implement a new idea and then have it run in a stable language modeling stack. So this space, that list was way smaller in 2024, so I think it was like just AI2. So that's a great thing for more people to get involved in to understand language models, which doesn't really have a Chinese company that has an analog.
Wow, I only paid like 500 yen, 1,000 yen for this. This is very good condition. £23. £23. It looks like it's PSA 9 or 10. I got this for a very good price then.
While talking, I'll say that the Chinese open language models tend to be much bigger, and that gives them this higher
Yeah, I got this for a very good price. £23.
performance as MOEs, where a lot of these things that we like a lot, whether it was Gemma and Nemotron, have tended to be smaller models from the US, which is starting to change from the US and Europe. Mistral Large 3 came out, which is a giant MOE model, very similar to DeepSeek architecture in December, and then a startup RCAI and both Nemotron and NVIDIA have teased MOE models of this way
it
bigger
does have
billion
some
parameters, like
scratches.
the 400 billion parameter range coming in this like Q1 2026 timeline. So I think this kind of balance is set to change this year in terms of what people are using the Chinese versus US open models for, which I'm personally going to be very excited to watch.
For sure. Huge props.
It's not perfect condition, but it is very good.
Being able to name so many of these. Did you actually name Llama?
No.
I feel like
This was not on purpose.
R.I.P. Llama. All right, can you mention what are some interesting models that stand out? So you mentioned Quen 3 is obviously a standout.
So I would say the year's almost book-ended by both DeepSeek version 3 and R1, and then on the other hand in December DeepSeek version 3.2, because what I like about those is they always have an interesting architecture tweak that others don't have. But otherwise, if you want to go with like the familiar but very good performance, Quen 3, and like Nathan said, also GPT OSS. And I think GPT OSS, what's interesting about it is kind of like the first public or like open weight model that was really trained with tool use in mind, which I do think is kind of a little bit of a paradigm shift where the ecosystem was not quite ready for it. So with tool use, I mean that the LLM is able to do a web search, to call a Python interpreter. And I do think this is a standout because I think it's a huge unlock. Because one of the most common complaints about LLMs are, for example, hallucinations, right? And so in my opinion, one of the best ways to solve hallucinations is to not try to always remember information or things up. For math, why not use a cat?
Oh, so I got this one I paid a lot for too. So I got a lot of valuable stuff in here. Let me find. So I only paid £23 for that one, which was the steel. And then where's the other stuff I paid for? Let's see. Paid 76k. So I paid way more for this one. 76k. £355 for these two. Okay, fair enough. These are, assuming they are legit, which I think they are. SDK. We've got the Blue Eyes White Dragon SDK and Dark Magician PSA 9. So I already had a pretty good condition PSA 9 Dark Magician, and this one is it in person, and this is the, I think it's Japan graded card. Both are pretty good condition. So we get the two legendary icons, the dual monsters in the original 2002 yeah, cool. Those are pretty much the best cards in the deck. Legendary
calculator app or pack. If I asked who won the Soccer World Cup in 1998, instead of just trying to memorize, to go do a search, I think mostly it's usually still a Google search, so ChatGPT, GPT-OSS, they would do a true call to Google, maybe find the FIFA website, find, okay, it was France, but would get you that information reliably instead of just trying to memorize it. So I think it's a huge unlock, which I think right now is not fully utilized yet by the open source, open weight ecosystem. A lot of people don't use tool call modes because I think it's first it's a trust thing. You don't want to run this on your computer where it has access to tools, could wipe your hard drive or whatever. So you want to maybe containerize that. But I do think that is like a really important step for the upcoming years to have this ability.
So a few quick things. First of all, thank you for defining what you mean by tool use. I think that's a great thing to do in general for the concepts we're talking about.
Yeah, well, that was it. Obviously these two, I still think these two, obviously you can hold it however you want. These two are the coolest ones that I bought. It's pretty expensive though, I spent like 300 quid on them.